Welcome to the Default Profitable Podcast. You're listening to the next episode of the podcast. Today, we're going to focus on what it takes to start, run, and grow a business in a small town. We're talking about some successes, some failures, and some stories from an actual business owner. I'm your host, Matt Nettleton. Today, my guest is Arrick Garringer. Arrick, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
No problem. I think we've known each other now for probably 15, 20 years.
Something like that. Yep.
Something like that. But why don't we take 3 minutes, introduce yourself and your business to the people that are listening.
Thank you. My name is Arrick Garringer. I own Windmill Marketing. Started out as solopreneurship, just myself. Have grown over we're one of those kind of COVID fortunate organizations that grew during the pandemic. And that led to me acquiring some extra business and hiring some additional folks to help me. But what we do is we help smaller organizations compete with larger organizations. So we do brand development, brand strategy, logos and websites, things of that nature. And we also have a service that we do with ongoing operational marketing support. And what we found is the small to medium-sized corporations, manufacturers, and especially nonprofits, if they can follow the processes and use the best practices that the larger organizations do, they can walk right beside them and compete with them. So that's kind of where we fit.
All right. So when did you actually start the business?
I had to look it up. It was October of 2012. I was working at an agency in Indianapolis. That's where I met you.
Yeah.
I'd heard about you prior from one of my clients who was one of your students that wouldn't stop talking about Sandler and Matt. And ended up, I joined an agency in Indy. I had a background in printing, primarily had worked in print-based shops. Even when I was in college, printing was really the focus, packaging design and posters and things of that nature. And when I joined this agency, we were a web-based agency, and all of my clients that I've been working with for years followed me right along. So I fell into sales kind of by accident. I went through this wave where for 6 months on the job, everybody bought stuff from me because they liked me and I'd done a great job for years for them. So the president said, here's a vice president of sales job title. And I fell flat on my face. I just didn't know what to do. I was completely paralyzed. Had a $50,000 a month sales goal and was trying to sell websites at $10,000 a piece. It just wasn't coming together. And so we worked with you, kind of established process, really broke things down in a way that I'm still using to this day. It really just changed the way I think about everything. Our president and CEO went to a HubSpot conference, got really interested in inbound marketing, and called us VPs to a meeting and said he had made a decision. We were going to shift into an inbound marketing agency, and we were going to stop doing the brand development and graphic design work, which was really that was my sweet spot. That was where I intended to focus. And so I tried. The biggest project I'd sold at that point in my career, a $65,000 website to a law firm, regional law firm, but I wasn't allowed to talk about branding. They had a real branding problem. I couldn't even pronounce their name. They had no logo. They just didn't have one. And I had to sidestep that to get the sale. And that conflicted with my whole philosophy of getting to the real problem, right? They called me in to talk about the website, but what's really going on around here, and so I decided to step away. I sold a project. It was a $10,000 freelance project and quit my job in the same day. It was just time for a change. My kiddos were getting complicated and I was tired of driving. And honestly, it was just a window of opportunity that just kind of aligned.
So you kind of sidestepped it. When you think about why you started the business, was it because you had a passion for marketing or you had a passion for doing things that you understood correctly?
That's a good question. My passion's for helping people. And again, part of what would get in my way in sales, I knew too much. I know these things. People call me in, I see their problems really quickly, and I just have this desire to fix them. And that honestly always lands in a branding problem. We start, it doesn't matter if they start talking about hiring and retaining people or, sales efficiency or output. It's just, it can typically be drawn back to, how do we get here? What's our story? Why are we even doing this? And the further I dig into that, the more I can help people and the more excited and engaged I get. So that's where my passion is, when I can get a business owner to tell me their founder's story, when I get them to tear up a little bit, in those kickoff meetings, and then I just help them materialize what they've been trying to do. That's what gets me going, compared to someone who might walk in and with features and benefits and bells and whistle and just say, trust me, this is going to be great. I really like to just sit down with my clients and, it's problem solving. It's troubleshooting, just like anything else.
And so if you look back, do you have the same passion now that you had 12 years ago, or does your passion have a different focus?
I would say I'm as passionate or more passionate, but it's focused on the client, not myself. And that's been a big transformation for me. When I joined the agency, I came from a background of, winning Addy awards and competing with other art directors in my agency. And just, it was all about me. Is someone going to buy me a cookie when I'm done with this project? And how's this going to look in my portfolio? And, it was that stepping away and starting my business that, that was the moment where I really went all in with focusing on my clients and letting their needs decide what we do. I know how to do lots of stuff, but that doesn't mean I need to go around telling everyone, hey, do this. And that was the history of the agency I worked for. Was we would tell people about things like Twitter or, social media marketing, pay-per-click marketing. People would get excited and buy it, but they had no plan. They had no guidepost. So it's been a chance for me to really start there at the cornerstone and kind of build from that point.
So what do you wish you knew when you started?
How cash flow works. I've almost failed so many times, right? Like that's just part of the process of owning a business. But that first project, $10,000 project, I sent a $5,000 invoice to one of the bigger clients I've ever worked with in my life, not realizing they have a process that's stronger than my process. And it took a month of training to be able to get in their system so that they could then consider the invoice. I had to wait almost 90 days for the first check, and paychecks don't work the same way. Paychecks show up on time. So that was probably, I would say don't underestimate the financial aspect, but couple that with the window of opportunity. I'm an overthinker, and had I waited much longer, I'd still be working for someone else, and I never would have had a chance to do what I'm doing today.
Okay, so cash flow being an issue, the number one cited issue in 100 and whatever episodes of this is financial literacy.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not exactly a shocking thing. And when you think about, my favorite description of this is when you think about the skinnies, those times where you're going out to see if the mailman's come yet.
Yep.
Because the check's on its way.
Went to the post office at lunch today.
Yeah. So let's see, 12 years in.
Yep.
When do you think that stops happening?
Well, I don't know if it stops. It's definitely changed. I went to the post office and shot an email to a client because it's been more than 30 days and they don't usually wait that long. I'm not in a pinch.
Right.
When I started my business, I was in a pinch. I was withdrawing money from my 401k. I was, I didn't have to borrow money. I got really close to that line, but I don't ever stop worrying about money. It comes from somewhere, and it comes from me and the work I produce. So when you're in a mode where you sell it and you produce it, and when you're in that seat, there is no real comfort zone that you get with a typical job. So, it does change. It equalizes. I have a good book of business. I have clients that are on contracts that give me a lot of control. I said no to a project today that, it's a dream client of mine. It's someone I really want to work with, but they said they're getting 3 estimates and they want it in a hurry and they're not in contract with me. And I just read the book, The Coaching Habit. And that one line he talks about if you say yes to this, what are you saying no to? I just keep coming back to that.
Right.
And one of my other clients was going to suffer, or my family was going to suffer. Something else was going to happen if I said yes to the project. And so that type of maturity happened over the 12 years, where at the beginning I was saying yes to everything, which created its own set of problems for sure. Working with people that I knew better than to work with. But you gotta put the food on the table, right?
I like groceries.
Yep.
Yeah, that I like groceries is probably the number one line that gets business owners into huge, huge trouble.
Yeah.
So if somebody comes to you and says, Arrick, you know what? I've been doing this marketing thing for a while. I'm working for a company. Things are okay, but I think I want to do something on my own. Do you encourage them or discourage them?
Like specifically in my industry?
Or anything.
I would just say make sure it's part of your life plan and that it's not a coping mechanism for a larger problem. I should have answered your question right the first time you asked it, but when you talked about at the beginning why I started and why I'm doing this, my first year of college, I had a plan to make a VHS cassette version of my portfolio and mail it to people as a marketing idea. I wanted to work for myself. I hadn't even learned how to design anything yet. I was already thinking about working for myself because my grandparents worked for themselves and owned businesses. And I had that desire. So if you don't have that desire, if you're sitting at work and you're not wishing you were driving the car that the business owner is driving, or if you're not aspiring for that freedom to get on the golf course or whatever it is you do with your free time, if it's not part of the plan, then it's probably not going to work. A lot of people I see that, and this happens a lot in my industry, if you've got that starving artist mentality, if you're just struggling to cope with people, this is not going to make things any easier on you. It's definitely going to make things worse. And number one, if you don't have a sales mentality, if you can't sell it, right? Like, had I started my business, I'm not just saying this because I'm on your podcast. If I had started this business before I met you, I would have failed completely. It was not just learning to sell it to put the groceries, in the pantry, but also selling my ideas, getting approvals on my designs, fulfilling the work, getting them into ongoing work in a smooth fashion. That's all sales. I mean, that sales is not just closing a new project or new client. It's ingrained in how we do our work. And I see a lot of, even some of my close friends who have left an agency, they're doing things on their own. They're more talented than I am, but they don't have that sales skill to negotiate or to stand their ground on something or just communicate in a sales kind of way. And so their system ends up being kind of weak. The client's system's pretty strong, and they're just chasing their tails all the time. And I've seen people do that for 20 or 30 years without realizing it. And it's not generally what people think it's going to look like. But I do think if you have that spark in your eye and you've got the right resources, if you're ready to read some books and surround yourself by other successful business owners who give you solid advice, go for it,
So you mentioned, if you're doing it for a reason, not just to get away from something else. Tell me about that. Where does that come from?
I know for myself, every job I've had at some point, I thought, man, this sucks. There's got to be a better something, right? Better place, better environment, better boss, whatever it is. There's a difference in that type of pursuit. This isn't going to be the next shiny thing. This is an all-in commitment. And I mean, I shouldn't say that. Some people start up businesses. When I was in the BNI networking circles, I saw people would start up businesses and it was just like hobbies. They would just fire them up, sell them off, do another one. That's not what it looks like if you're going in to provide for your household, or it's not a hobby. It's not, I start to say it's not fun. It is fun. I'm having a good time right now, but it's not puppy dogs and rainbows,
Yeah, I think Stephanie Daly a long time ago on this said, if you're not comfortable waking up at 3 a.m. and worrying about your business, you probably shouldn't get in it.
Yep. That's a good way of putting it.
All right. So if you could go back to 2012, the night before you're going to open, and 2024 Arrick gets to sit down next to 2012 Arrick and say, hey, listen, everything works out all right. You'll be fine. But tomorrow, when you open your business, you can do a million different things. Here's the thing you need to focus on first. What's that thing?
A bookkeeper. I wish I would have partnered with a bookkeeper way sooner. I thought it was out of reach financially. I didn't realize how attainable it was. So I would have told myself to adjust my rates out of the gate to allow for me to staff my organization appropriately, support my clients the right way. I'm saying that the way that I am for a reason, that I'll explain in a second. And then also specifically in the bookkeeping department, just looking for people who do those things that even though you know how to do them, it's not billable time. It's not the best use of your time. And they're great people. I mean, and so early on in my career, I looked at that as weakness. I didn't want to outsource anything that I knew how to do because I could do everything pretty well, I felt. But I think for me, I would have needed to look at that as I can do a better job for my clients. I wouldn't have done it and didn't do it to make it easier on me. But a few years ago, I started raising some rates with certain clients. And I got pretty uncomfortable, and I justified it because I was able to provide better service. I was able to turn around their requests more quickly. I would have invested, suggested I invest more up front so that I had a little more of a, not safety net, more of a team of resources. And because I'm sure I looked like I was flying alone for a long time because I was, and over the last few years, being able to say, Jennifer, we'll send that over to you, or Jen and I are on a call, or Adam's working on that for you. It just, it gives you a stability that even if it's just psychologically, it's a scary place when you step away from a company and you're all on your own. And if those contracts can be pretty small and still give you that feeling that you've got a team.
So let me ask you a question. Prior to starting your business, I mean, you went out, you sold a $10,000 freelance job. Did you have a business plan?
Not at all. No.
Have you ever, by the way, not an uncommon answer, since you've started in the 12 years that you've been running, have you ever made a business plan?
I have now. We'll break down business plan. It was 2.5 years ago. I invested in some brand strategy coursework and added that service offering to my business. It's not a business plan, but some people can use it as a business. It's not far off from a business plan. It doesn't really address some operational things, some financial things. But setting goals, looking for gaps, creating a roadmap to address those gaps, having a document that's strategic that you can reflect on 1, 3, and 5 years out. I really wish I would have had someone help me through that process. I had a bunch of note cards and a bunch of Post-it notes and a whole lot of hustle. And that's not the easiest way to do it, not the best way to do it.
Might be the hardest.
I'm sure it is, yeah.
Well, the other thing is you probably had great financial reserves so that you weren't under pressure financially right off the bat.
Oh, yeah. Stacks, man.
Stacks, yes.
Unlimited.
Which is the second thing, right? Everybody says, hey, don't start without a plan. Don't start without savings. Make sure you have this. Make sure. And it's pretty much nobody has it.
I think that's the trap, man. And that's why I mentioned earlier about the window of opportunity. It's like trying to hop on a moving bus. It's never going to work out perfect, right? The world's never going to pause so that you can figure all that out so that you can start your own business.
Right.
But if you just jump in and you don't have some kind of a checkpoint or some kind of a framework, the amount of time you'll spend floundering, all the inefficiencies that go along with that, I feel like there's a significant percentage of people who fail that's why, and that's when it happens.
Yeah.
So I think you need to get a plan together. A plan can be very, very concise, very brief, and still be a plan. So yeah, my plan initially was hustle. Oh my God, what am I going to do now? And that lasted about a year before things started equalizing a little bit. And I'd like to have that year back. I could have done better. I should have done better.
And how many people do you have working for you now?
Let's see. I've got a videographer, a graphic designer that has a web lean, a graphic designer that has a print lean, and then Jennifer, who's my project manager. And then myself. So that's 5 of us.
That's a real business.
Yeah.
Yeah. Should be proud of that.
Thank you.
So is there any other advice if you were going to talk to somebody who's thinking about starting a business or has recently started a business?
I would just say network with other business owners. Gosh, I'm stepping on myself here. I moonlit with a guy who owned an agency in Indy when I was still working for an agency. I was doing some side work when the kid was young and I needed the money. And I told him that I said, Mark, I really wish I was working for myself. I like what you're doing, And he teared up and he got all serious on me. He said, don't do it. He said, you've got a great job with a great company. You don't understand what it's like. Like he went into full on meltdown, freak out mode on me. And honestly, that probably delayed me for about 7 or 8 years and what was going to happen. I was going to start my own business. But he really got in my head with his story. Luckily, I met another person like him who he and his wife had built a really successful business, and he had great clients and he got to do whatever he wanted. His home was beautiful. It was the picture of what I was looking for. So just know when you talk to a bunch of people, you're going to get all that input. Be careful what your parents tell you. Be careful. You gotta get it all out. You gotta get all that information. But at the end of the day, you do have to trust your gut. And that's why I said, if this is a exit strategy because you didn't know what else to do, that's different than going into it with some passion, some purpose. Even if you got to do a workbook, do the mission, vision, and values for yourself. Get that. Why am I get from the how to the why? Why am I trying to do this? And if you can do that, all those little things that are going to change in your first 5 years of business, they're going to still be in alignment with what you were trying to do to begin with.
Yeah, that's good advice. All right. Well, that's a quick 25 minutes. So, hey, before we wrap up, I'm going to remind everybody, you want to learn more about Arrick and his company, you can do it over at the show notes at defaultprofitable.com. And there's 3 ways you can help us continue to grow if you're listening. First, leave a review wherever you listen. Apple helps the most. Second, hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any episodes. And third, if you hear something interesting, share the episode with somebody you know. Arrick, thanks for being a guest.
I appreciate it, Matt.
And for our listeners, we'll be back next week with another episode of Default Profitable. Until then, stay focused, keep working, stay profitable.